Said money in the Constitution said should be gold or silver, precisely to avoid this age-old problem. And that's based on the Bible and common law. That's what common law, natural law, the 5 elements. See, we're getting back to that. So valuable? Well, that's another.
Because it's technically is a rare item, and by having gold, then you have a set limit. If you only have, let's sit here and say, $1 billion in gold, and that's all you have in your treasury, you can't go out and create 150 billion because you only have this much.
That's exactly what they've done now.
But what they've done, they took the gold out of this.
That's what everyone's suffering.
They took the gold out. They made the people the collateral. So now, after they get done with you, they'll go after your kids.
Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole More Deeply. This is part 2 of our time with Rod Class, who came up from South Carolina, and he's running for president as a write-in, Rodney Dale Class. And I'm just very intrigued because, you know, no matter what happens with the election, I mean, I think you could win. But I don't know if the search engines will be jammed. Once people understand your message, like Joe and I felt that the very campaigning itself will lift up a lot of people because it'll give them remedies in court. And hopefully, with more people with their remedies, we can turn the whole country around.
Well, it's like we were sitting here saying in the last show, you're getting into the courts for the corruption. That falls back under the state of emergency. It goes back into the securitization of your signature. It goes back into the birth certificate. When you're walking into these courts, and this is where the problem's coming in, if we were operating under a constitutional form of government, then a judge would have to sit here and be a mediator. A jury would have to make all the decisions and rulings. The prosecutor would have to bring in a real victim.
Right.
Under Rule 17, real party of interest. That's under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. But because we're operating under the state of emergency side of this thing, and they're bringing you in as an alien enemy resident, now where did this come from?
That's amazing.
Okay, now you go back in and you ask a judge, or you ask a lawyer, what is the authority of you bringing a criminal charge against me? Where's your authority? Because under the Civil Rules of Civil Procedure, or the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 2 says there is but one course of action, and that's civil.
Under military rule?
No, that's under civil. That's just
civil.
Under regular Constitution. There is no criminal law under Constitution brought by the state. Not brought by the state. Now, on you and I, that's different. No, I'll get into this.
What about treason? Isn't that a crime?
No, well, just hold on a minute. Hold on. Okay, understand. Civil action. Under constitutional form of government, if we had a murder, a rape, hit and run, the prosecutor would have to bring in the victim or the victim's family, represent them in that courtroom. The state of New York represents the family of John Doe against the defendant, Mary Smith, or John Smith, okay? Then the state could come in and represent because they actually have a real victim. But under the state of emergency, it's the state of New York, the state of North Carolina, the state of California. Where does the state get the authority to bring in the state? It falls back under the state of emergency clause. They always bring criminal charges. You ask a judge or you ask the attorney, what authority do you have to bring criminal charges? Well, that comes under Title 18. No, sir, that's the penalty section. But as you are aware, Title 18 was never passed by the House. It was only passed by the Senate. We got congressional records. We got certification.
What year, Title 18?
Title 18 is the penalty section. That goes back in for the criminal side.
Right. What year was that passed?
It wasn't.
Or not passed?
It was not passed. It was supposedly kicked in 1925, 1929, in that area, okay? The thing of it is, it only went by the House. there was too many errors in it for it to be passed by the Senate. And the Senate says, no way, we're not passing this. So it became prima facie law. The prima facie law is, unless you challenge it, it's the rule of law. But the point being of it is, that's the penalty section. That is not the jurisdiction section. There's a difference between jurisdiction and penalties. So when you go back and push the penalty section or push the jurisdictional side of this thing, they will never tell you. And the reason why is because jurisdiction comes under Title 50 of the United States Code. What's Title 50? War and National Defense. Get into Chapter 3, Alien Residents. Whoops, alien resident. We just talked in a previous show how the state of emergency put us in under the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917.
I don't understand how they can make all the American people alien enemies.
Very simple. They went behind closed doors. They wrote up the law. They sit here and passed it. It never came before the people because remember...
How can you be an alien on the land on which you were born?
Very simple. They occupied it. We have a force that came in and they took over our government. Remember, Roosevelt, we went from a Republican form to a democracy. They changed our government.
Right.
So we truly are their slaves.
Oh, yes, we are, under the present circumstances.
It's not just a metaphor.
I don't accept it.
No, but see, the thing of it is, they're still hiding.
Right, only if you acknowledge their authority. We're saying they're occupying. They're saying, I guess, even they're saying, they're sneaky.
Well,
they're not saying to the world we are. Oh, yeah, right.
We're going back in some time here because this thing was not set up overnight. They did this through a period of years setting this thing up. That's what my research team, we have a timeline that goes in, shows where all this stuff came up through different periods of years to set us where we're at. So they made us alien resident enemies, but under Title 50. If you get into Title 50, get into Chapter 3, get into Section 23. Section 23's jurisdiction of the courts and judges shall be criminal, and it goes in against alien enemy residents for disturbing the peace. Not criminal charges, disturbing the peace.
Oh.
That's what we're being charged with. This falls back under military law. You're out here disturbing the peace, so they're picking you up for curfew violation. This is the fraud that's being perpetrated. So when you're walking into this court, okay, well, a lot of people don't know, and we discovered it. And I ran some test runs on it. Okay, when you're going in for your arraignment, your first initial hearing, that arraignment court is an administrative court. All right.
Is the arraignment the grand jury?
No, the grand jury, that's if they're bringing criminal charges, but that is if you're being charged, but you have to go through an arraignment. The arraignment, they give you three choices: guilty, not guilty, or you sit down and you throw yourself on the mercy of the court. Okay?
What's that called?
That goes back into where it is no contest.
No contest?
No contest. You're not arguing.
When you throw yourself, oh, wow.
You're not arguing.
Sounds bad.
You're going to come in and say no contest. So now you're allowing the judge to make a predetermination of what he's going to do to you.
Why would somebody do no contest?
Because people are stupid. People are stupid. They don't know any better.
They weren't educated.
That's exactly right. That's part of what I tried to teach.
They have no idea of their tradition, because all the religious traditions point to not do fraud.
Okay, but see, the thing of it is, what people are missing here, when you're going into your arraignment, we have learned through filing paperwork into different courts, the first thing that comes back on us, you failed to exhaust your administrative remedies before you came to us.
And they don't give you a clue what they are, right?
No, but see, this is what we discovered. This is what this arraignment is. That arraignment is your administrative court. The judge don't tell you this, but I was fortunate enough down in North Carolina, I had a traffic violation. And the judge sat here and said in open court, this is an administrative court. I am an administrative law judge, and we are under maritime jurisdiction. And I thought to myself, you idiot.
He said all.
Yes, he did. And I went, yes, because I teach administrative law on my show. So when he come up, he called me up and says, Mr. Class, how do you plead? I said, well, you and I have a very serious problem. I told him, first off, I already filed this into a real administrative court because this is a traffic issue. You're not it. Secondly, I filed for a 12B1, 12B2 under Civil Rules Procedure, 12B6, you failed to state a claim. But I also brought in the 11th Amendment of the Constitution into this courtroom. Now, what a lot of people don't understand under the 11th Amendment, the 11th Amendment says judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or in equity. Commence prosecution against one of the citizens of the United States or citizens or subject of a foreign state. Now, what does that mean? Let's go back to Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1 of the original Constitution. 11th Amendment is an amendment that was done after the Bill of Rights. Let's talk about the Constitution here. Everybody's looking for that Article 3 court. Article 3 court falls on Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1. Judicial power of the United States shall extend to all cases under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, treaties, admiralty, maritime, ambassadors, consulars, controversies between the United States, controversies between the state and a citizen. I didn't say citizen against the state. I said the state against a citizen. Citizens of a different state, citizens of the same state, and citizens of a foreign state. So that's where Article...
What's different in foreign? Isn't
foreign state deals with, you're dealing with Mexico, you're dealing with England, you're dealing
and what's
with...
different?
Okay, at that time period when this thing came in was during the Revolutionary War. The United States borrowed money off of foreigners. Foreigners wanted their money back at the end of the war. Well, they came in and they sued. So the Constitution gave them the ability for the foreign countries to sue the United States for their money for the Revolutionary War. Now, what happened here is when this was done, this was in our Constitution. 1789 is when our Congress, first Congress, created the Judiciary Act, which created the inferior courts, which created the District Court of the United States. It created the district territories. But what a lot of people aren't aware of, when the Judiciary Act was created, it not only created the courts, but it created the ability for the Attorney General's office to come up. Now stop and think. If you got a court, you got to have a prosecutor. So when the Judiciary Act created the courts, it created prosecution. This was in 1789. Because of us coming out of the Revolutionary War and because of the lawsuits and other issues, they went back in and they passed the 11th Amendment of the Constitution in 1795 on February 5th. That's when they sit down and says judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to laws or in equity.
Is that the remedies to go back to the Constitution and common law?
Yes, it is. So what this does...
But they don't tell you that's
Oh, no, they don't. The courts don't tell you that.
Your process.
See, this is what we're running into in the problem with the court systems today. Number one, when you're walking into the arraignment, that's your administrative court. If you do not put paperwork in to object administratively, then you go to a judicial review. Judicial review is a record of what would happen in the administrative side of this thing. If you didn't put nothing in on the administrative side, there's nothing for the judge to hear.
Administer.
Right.
You have to create...
You got to create a record.
That's what Dean Clifford means when he says all your paperwork is generating their activity. They live for your paperwork.
Yes. So, but when you're going,
Even when you're beating them and they can't answer, the prosecutor can't answer the great Supreme Court rulings?
because when you went into your administrative, you went into your arraignment, they only gave you 3 choices.
Right. Guilty, not guilty.
Guilty or no contest. They don't allow no paperwork in. So when you're going for your judicial review, you have nothing on the record. So when you try to speak up, Your Honor, I can't hear it, because if you don't make the argument here, you can't bring it in here. So he shuts you down. This is part of the scam of the court system. This is part of the scam of the Bar Association. Okay, this is one aspect of it. That 11th Amendment is the other aspect of it, because they're allowing the prosecution, they're allowing the police officers out on the street to bring statutory law against you for parking violation, marijuana violation, drug violations.
IRS violations.
Oh yeah, all this. They're allowing them to bring the laws against you. So when you walk into that court, if you don't present it at your arraignment, you can't bring it into the court. But then they turn around and the judge sit here and say that you can't bring the laws into my courtroom. You can't bring the Constitution into my courtroom. Well,
How does he get away with that?
Because the 11th Amendment sits there and says judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit and law. What's Constitution? Law. What's the state of laws? What's state statutories? Law. What's UCC? Equity.
Well, now we're back to no law for anybody,
What happens here is this.
which is a disaster.
Joe is a defendant. I'm the prosecutor. You're the judge. You are not going to allow Joe to bring anything into this courtroom under the 11th Amendment, but you're not going to tell him that. You're going to tell him he can't bring the laws in. He can't defend himself.
Yeah, that's what they did. I put in all this paperwork on the Constitution, saying, you know, that it was all my rights. That they and the judge actually said my arguments had no merit.
That's exactly
and I
right.
said, how can I cited the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings.
Yep.
How can the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings have no merit?
Because under the 11th Amendment, he went in, he has no judicial power. How did I find this out? I filed paperwork into a federal court against judges. The attorneys for the judges in a federal court came back in and they told the federal judge, Your Honor, pursuant to the 11th Amendment of the Constitution, the plaintiff, Mr. Class and Dave Bussey, cannot bring any laws or equity into this court. And Mr. Class and Mr. Bussey cannot commence prosecution because the 11th Amendment forbids it. And I went, right there's the answer. This is how they're operating us in these local courts and
So how
in
do
the
you
federal
turn it
courts.
around, Rod?
Do what?
How do you turn this around to
Well, what
your
we turn
advantage?
around and do, now we walk into these state courts and we play the 11th Amendment immunity. You have
So
no
in other
sympathy.
words, to get you in, they'd have to go through the State Department.
Well, this is another second. We're going to get into
In other
this.
words, what the heck are you doing?
Wait, I want to hear this. Go ahead.
See, what we got here, we got several different jurisdictional issues. What a judge does, he slides. The moment you hit him up on one, like on the administrative side, he slides over to the 11th Amendment side. So now he's covered on the 11th Amendment. But if you don't understand this, he's got you.
Is that what Roger meant by the targets moving?
Yes.
Yeah, so we
the
have
target
to move
moves.
fast.
You got to move with the target.
Right.
You got to move with the target.
Yeah.
So when you bring him in and you do the 11th Amendment jurisdiction here, and the judge sits there and says, we're not going to allow you to do that. It says, okay, then you brought me in under criminal charges, did you not? Yes, we did. Then you brought me in under the Trading with the Enemy Act, and you brought me in under the state of emergency.
Then what does he say?
Now, that's the third jurisdiction. That's the third target we moved over to. Because under the state of emergency, technically, under military law, all laws are suspended. But see, we got one
That's why
problem
he said
here.
it has no merit?
Yes.
Even Supreme Court rulings
That's
are
exactly
suspended?
right. All laws are suspended. But see, we got one problem here. On November 2nd, is the only day we are under the Constitution in this country. Why? Because this is the day I want to be hired. I want to be governor. I want to be president. I want to be elected. That's the only day we get Constitution. That is from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. At 9:01, we go back under the state of emergency, where now we're no longer a constitutional form of government, because now we're back under martial law.
But then
this is the concept.
But what about all those votes only having 3 electoral votes out of the District of Columbia? That made so much sense to me when I heard that. If we're all citizens of the District of Columbia, that only controls 3 electoral votes. And that's why voting isn't doing much.
Well, see, we got another problem here.
Because all the states are supposed to vote for their favorite person, and then at some time, everybody comes together, who they're electors, I guess you call them, and they decide who's the most popular will be president, and who's the second most popular will be vice president.
Well, that's how it's supposed to work, but the president's supposed to pick his own vice president before they run. That's what I'm running into. I got to pick my own.
No, but I'm saying that's what I read in the Constitution.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
The most popular guy. So
yes.
If you ran for president and people start to do the writing and you do the internet thing, you could just probably tabulate who's the most popular.
Well, it would be. You
who's
could get
the second. And yet now on the internet you have fabricated personalities, so that seems a little dangerous. That's where the affidavits come in, and the robo-signing, that you've got to connect a real flesh being to
That's where all that comes in at.
And yeah.
But see, what you're running into, getting within with that all this falls back on the state of emergency, because from what we said at the beginning, running through your courts on all of this, now the judge runs into the state of emergency side where everything is suspended. That's why your laws is frivolous. Besides the 11th Amendment,
no merit.
It has no merit. It's frivolous. It's merit. But see, the problem of it is that flag that flies behind that judge, everybody's mistaking that. That's not an Admiralty's flag. An Admiralty's flag is blue.
You're right, it's military.
Right.
We went to the VA and we saw the flag with the yellow
This
fringe.
falls under Army Regulations 840-10. It falls under 8.1, 8.2. That eagle isn't a presidential, that is an administrative flag with that gold fringe. Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1959 passed Executive Order 10-834, putting that gold fringe on the flag and putting it into administrative offices. That makes every one of these courts administrative courts, not judicial.
Why did he do that in 1959? Why 1959?
Why? Because it went back in and solidified the fact that we have no judicial power in these courts, but administrative under the state of emergency. This is when a lot of stuff changed back at this time period again in this country.
Who appreciates that flag? Because we were helping Lindy Heiss in Oregon, and she said there was no gold fringe on her flag. Is there? What's that about? And Josephine County, I also found surprisingly through the internet, had already become familiar with Lynn Schmaltz's work, talking about the securitization of prisoners at $10,000 a day.
Yep.
So why would her flag have no gold fringe?
All right, some courts take it out. But the thing of it is, did they leave the eagle set on top, or did they put the ball on top?
The eagle and the ball has meaning?
Yep, the eagle is administrative. That's presidential. The little round ball is civilian. Look at any of these posts outside. When the flags are flying, you got the round ball and a straight flag.
So administrative means presidents and corporations. Yes. Now, what's the danger to flesh and blood human beings to be in corporate administrative courts?
This goes back in under the state of emergency side, where they sit down and created the all caps name under the birth certificate. This is how they stole our identity. When you're walking into the court, they're calling you by your name. Now, the courts understand this, trust me. The judges do understand it. Because when judges get retired, a lot of them talk, they say, oh yeah, we knew about this. Oh yeah, we knew about this.
How sickening.
Yes, it is. It's like with police officers. Okay, police officers, I've had several of them that are retired who sit back and say, oh yeah, we knew we violated people's rights, but it was our job. We had to do it. It was our paycheck. I wanted my retirement.
Right.
So wait a minute, let's go back in here. The bottom line is, Nazi Germany, during the Nuremberg trial, what did Germany sit and say? Well, we was only following orders. Every one of them got hung for following orders. We are under the state of emergency. We're under military law. we come under the Lieber Code. That Lieber Code is rules of engagement for the police officers and the courts of how they deal with civilian population in this country. That Lieber Code is really strict. I mean, it's real strict.
How did you find, or your research team find the Lieber Code?
Yes. We got different people who's sitting on different information.
What's our remedy? That's what I want to know.
What's our remedy? Education. Knowledge. Education.
And that's what public access is all about. Education.
This is what my show is all about. It's about educating the American people. In order to fix a problem, you have to know where they broke it, how they broke it, when they broke it.
Right.
You have to have the history and knowledge behind it.
You have to have what Constitution Man calls intestinal fortitude.
That too.
Because now that we've descended into the depths, there's beauty in the system and there is remedy.
There is remedy. And we're finding remedies in these courts.
I don't see beauty in the system. It's just so corrupt. It's like, unless the American people wake up and demand change.
But the remedy's got to come from a system. That's why I was intrigued by, he said, the military book that was thrown out by Roosevelt.
Yes, see, the thing of it is, how are you going to ask for change if you didn't know where it was broke?
Right.
That's the problem.
Or you didn't have an ideal model. Maybe that's what Plato meant.
Yeah, but the scam is so complex.
It is.
That very few people, I mean, like, you've studied it for so long, but 98% or 99% of the American people are going into the court and don't know any of this, and they're all getting screwed.
Yes, they are. They're getting railroaded because of lack of education. The problem we're dealing with is you cannot hire an attorney. An attorney cannot and will not come in and defend you. Example. Okay. I made a trip out to California. I carried a revolver. I had it in my backpack. I had it in a little black bag. I had it in the airplane, padlocked, okay? I didn't have a problem getting to California. I came back. I got pulled off the airplane. All right? TSA pulled me off. Says, Mr. Class, you failed to disclose that you had a firearm. I said, I didn't have a firearm. Yes, you did. I says, no, sir. First off, you don't know the definition of the word firearm. I do. I didn't have one. Plus, I'm not going to debate with you because you're not intelligent enough to understand the law.
You told him that?
Yes, I did.
People don't take kindly to that, do they?
No, they don't.
I find they bully more.
But see, the thing of it is, and you didn't have it properly packaged. It says, how do you figure? I had it in a black case. I had it in a backpack. I had it in my suitcase. And you cut my padlock off. You cut my padlock off. I had it secured. Well, you didn't have a proper box. I said, why do I need a proper box? He says, well, we don't want people getting into it. I said, whoa, wait a minute. You're telling me that you're running me through a metal detector, and you get people who don't go through a metal detector working on your desk and plant bombs on these airplanes without the people knowing it, and you're telling me that I have to have a padlock on the box because your people are thieves? Is that what you're telling me? Well, I had a bunch of people around me, and they got real upset, so they pulled me off to the side. I said, just buy the box. So I bought the box. I come home. A month later, I got a letter from TSA, Homeland Security. They sit down and says, Mr. Class, you got 5 choices. Pay a $500 fine and face charges by the state. If you don't have the $500, pay a $300 fine and face charges by the state. Or you can go before a mediator and we can mediate this, or we can go before an administrative law judge under Title V, under 3105. And yes! That's my field. I want an administrative law judge. And then I read number 5. They turn around and says, if you can justify why we should not charge you, put it in writing. You got 30 days. I said, oh man, choices. Which one do I want? I got so many here. Because I taught administrative law.
You mean you kind of would have fun with it?
Oh yeah, I was going to have fun with this.
That would terrify most people.
Oh yes, it would.
Terrify them so they would not want a gun. They would not want to be around people that had guns.
Okay, well see, the thing of it is, what I did was...
And yet, if you think about it, if you don't have the right to protect yourself, you're going to be run over also.
Well, wait a minute. No, what you're forgetting
People
here...
come in without warrants. They've come in 2 times. Joe Barton, by the way, is the name, Gloria, B-A-R-T-O-N. I saw she had up Joe. 2 times they came in with no warrants.
Okay,
he woke up with a shaky barrel like that, even,
okay,
you know, and the warrant. Oh.
But you forget one thing here: the word firearm. I did have a firearm. I had a revolver. So what I did, I got into Title 27, Code of Federal Regulations, 479.11. Definition of firearm. A firearm is a shotgun modified of a barrel 18 inches or less, overall length less than 26. A modified rifle of a barrel of 18 inches or less, overall length less than 26. A fully automatic or less, overall length less than 26. A fully automatic machine gun and a silencer. And a gun has a barrel of 1.5 inches in diameter. 1.5 inches.
That's huge.
That's a gun. Okay. So I got into Title 26, United States Code, 5845, definition of the word firearm. It is a modified shotgun, the whole same thing. So I sent this in. I said, okay, would you please tell me which one of these items that I had? I gave them 30 days to answer me. I said it by...
And I guess that's the last you heard from them?
No, well, what I did is they threatened me if I didn't answer within 30 days, I was going to be in federal court. I was hoping to be in federal court. I wanted to argue this on the administrative side. So anyhow, I fired it off to them. They said on it. I sent them another letter. Same thing. I said, now, I put a green card return receipt into you. You failed to return my green card. This is now mail fraud, and if you don't give me my green card back, I'm going to bring charges against you for wire fraud and mail fraud. So another 6 weeks went by. I got a call from Homeland Security. It says, Mr. Class, says, we're going to drop all the charges against you. I says, you are? Why? He said, what? I said, why are you dropping the charges? I said, I want a hearing. He says, well, we can't give you a hearing. I says, why not? He says, because our definition of the word firearm is different than your definition of the word firearm. I says, it is. I says, I pulled mine out of Title 27 CFR and out of Title 26 United States Code. Where did you guys get yours? He says, out of Webster's Dictionary. I said, Webster's Dictionary? He said, that's why, because you brought in the legal definitions. They could not give me a trial because if we went to a trial and had a debate over the definition of firearm, they would have to dismiss, and that means every single case in this country where the people were charged with a firearm, the cases would have to be overturned and dismissed. No lawyer can operate and no lawyer can bring this in because it would expose the fraud. That lawyer is tied into the Bar Association. This is the same thing with these mortgages that we're dealing with. The moment we go in and we show the securitization that the banks are making off of our signature, that automatically pays any loan. But the thing of it is, the moment you signed, that property was yours to start with because you gave them that signature. Remember that watch?
Yeah.
It wasn't about the watch, it was about the signature.
Right.
So every one of these mortgages is paid. The banks know it. The courts know it.
But that's why we want to know, why is your signature worth $1 billion or whatever it's worth that your research team has discovered? Where did that power come from? Because now I feel terrible that my signature has generated all this mischief in the world. And I feel the time has come that I need to go into court and stand up as a creditor and say, you know, what has been, you know, defiled in my name, without me knowing this. How can you do this?
It is.
And bring to task the people. I'm not for having the trustees hide and you hope they never show up. I want to know who they are, and I want to challenge them.
Well, see,
and I want to sit down with people and say, how can we go forward with a correct way? And I was thinking to have a goodwill tour to Kashmir and to Pakistan, and to understand at that time with Raja and me, those of goodwill who really want to understand this, and to take leisurely time, you know, eat together and tour and look at the holy spots and see that indeed all parts of the world have understood that greed needs to be mitigated so that culture and history and art, real history, we don't even know our history, can advance. And if we don't know our history, we're like just one step above animals.
Well, see, once you start getting the rest of the world to understand that the United States operates as the bank for the world through the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve deals with everybody, and the United States takes on everybody's debt. Because whenever we trade, Federal Reserve, the signature comes in. This is what McFadden gets into. That signature sits there and securitizes. It creates. How does it create? You know, it's a strange setup. But this is what McFadden was getting into. Is every time you sign, it generates more Federal Reserve notes. Don't generate money. It generates Federal Reserve notes.
Say again who McFadden is.
Yeah, Congressman McFadden, 1932.
Okay.
He's the one that got in and explained. It generates Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve notes is a promise to pay. It's a IOU. It's a debt note. So whenever you're sitting here using securitizing, you can create all the debt notes you want. It has no value. It has no meaning. But it does to them because it puts you and I deeper and deeper in debt. See, the understanding of this, and this is what the courts understand, if the American people would wake up and they would understand, prior to 1933, we actually dealt with gold and silver. Okay, when you walked into the bank and you had to pay it back, or they gave it to you. After 1933, the signature come in. The people were so indoctrinated that you had to pay back what you borrow.
That they didn't notice the slipper.
They didn't know that they didn't know it. They sit here and they sold us out. It was your signature that was securitizing. So technically, what this would do,
before that, a dollar bill would be a certificate of a certain amount of gold held on reserve.
All right, you remember the old silver certificates?
And gold certificates.
Yeah, gold certificates.
They were backed by gold.
You could actually take that in, and they would give you a chunk of gold or give you a chunk of silver for that dollar.
Right.
You take a Federal Reserve note in, you can't get anything out of it other than another Federal Reserve note. If you got a 20, they'll give you a 5 and 2 tenths, or 10 and 2 fives. Okay? The thing of it is, if the people would understand, and this is what the countries are scared, this is what they're afraid of, and this is part of the understanding, is that your labor would generate credit. As long as we built homes, as long as we built papers and pencils and schools and had education, your program here with what you're doing, as long as we're being productive, our signature is all we needed. If we wanted $1 million home, we go down and we sign for it. That was given to us. They took our signature. They securitized. So now that would put us up with a judge who has $1 million home. Well, I don't want somebody who sits here and digs ditches living beside me. You got these doctors that got education. Well, I sure don't want somebody who's draining cesspools living beside me. So what we have to do, we have to classify the people. So we won't tell the people. We'll make them pay it back. We take their signature, we're securitized, and we make them think that they're getting a loan, and we make them pay it back plus interest. This way we have our class level of people here. All right, once you start understanding this bankruptcy, there's no class level of people. We're all the same. If I want a $5 million home, all I have to do is go down to the bank, sign it. They take that money out of my account because Raja, we got a hold of a QSIP number for a birth certificate. We went back in and we pulled up that birth certificate account. That account on that birth certificate is worth well over $1 billion. That's what's in our account in the birth certificate. We can now prove this. Before it was theory, now we can prove it because we got a hold of the information. So this is what they're tying into. This is what the cops are tying into. This is what the judges, because whenever you go down and you do a driver's license, they pull that number off the back of your Social Security card. That's the routing number into your Federal Reserve account. This is so that courts can get into it. So every time they drag you in, they're tapping into your account. Every time you sign for a mortgage, they're tapping into this account.
You know, we sent this paperwork on from Raja to Lindy Heiss's judge, Lindy Baker, over in Oregon, and she was facing, 11 counts, 9 felonies, 2 misdemeanors. They put it down a little bit, but it was so scary, so stressful. She'd lose her children and everything. And she got 3 years probation. Now, we still want to argue on that, too, because probation, we feel, is also
it's a setup.
Again, you're going back in, you're coming back in under the state of emergency clause. The courts under the 11th Amendment have no judicial power. Zip, nada.
But if people discover this, aren't they hugely liable? Because we said on Joe's case that we were going to hold people responsible at the probation department, and they backed off.
They did.
They gave Joe nothing. but we still wanted to take back the plea.
Okay, what we discovered here since October of last year, like I said, we discovered the District Court of the United States. That's a lower D.C. court. We discovered it, and it's under Title 28, 610, but it's also under Title 28, 1441, 1442.
And that's our remedy against bad
that's our remedy,
administrators,
the District Court.
judges, and so on.
But see, what they've done in 1938, 1939, they switched the District Court over to the United States District Court.
They created another corporation.
Yes, they did.
That's all they did.
That United States District Court, if you look in under Title 28, 1391, that tells you that falls under foreign sovereign immunity. This is court that deals with foreign state, that part of that 11th Amendment.
Right.
Subject to a foreign state, the United States District Court is operating.
So the 11th Amendment is our way out of that.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
What they passed here in December,
This is the good news, ladies and gentlemen.
what they passed here in December, they went back in under Public Law 112-63, under H.R. 394. They just passed it here. Now, it wasn't really a new law, but it was a clarification of the jurisdiction and venue of Title 28 of 1332, 1441, 1442. It's the jurisdiction of the United States District Court.
Why'd they need to clarify?
Why? Because we were starting to come in, all of our paper. We got lawsuits going across the United States with what I'm working with.
Yeah, I know. And we've got gigabytes now. It's no use to kill him, you know. The word's out.
The word's
we got
out.
people in the control room that are mighty interested.
What we're doing, we're coming back in and we're exposing. Because, see, the District Court of the United States, lower D.C. court, was always the court of the United States. The court says, well, you're in the United States District Court. I said, that's not what I asked you. That's not what I said. I said, I want to file this paperwork into the District Court of the United States. He said, well, you're in the United States District Court. I said, you're not listening. He says, I told him, here it is, Title 28, Judiciary, Judicial Procedures. This is your procedure book. This is your rule book. He said, well, we come under the rules of federal civil procedure. I says, no, that rule guidelines on how paperwork is to be filed. Title 28, Judiciary Judicial Procedures, is where your jurisdiction lies and venue lies. That's not the rules. These are your jurisdiction and venues. Right here it says District Court. Well, another lady came over and says, what are you guys trying to do? I sit down, we told her. She says, okay. She took our paperwork. We found that District Court of the United States. Now, what we also sit here and understand, if you're going into the United States District Court, the capital USDC, you use Federal Reserve notes, that's their money. When you're going into the District Court, lower DC, capital US, District Court of the United States, you either got to use silver, or you got to use postal money orders, either international, because it's backed by gold and silver.
International going through Bern, Switzerland?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one brings
Has to
in.
be
That's why we
international
send
money orders?
registered mail,
Yeah.
by the way.
You can't use postal money orders?
You can use postal money orders because it's backed by gold and silver. But so you got three choices here: silver, international money orders, or postal, because it's all back. Because stop and think here, ladies and gentlemen, very seriously. You go down to the bank, you get a money order, it's got a time limit on it, 60 days, 90 days.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's gone.
No, that's how the bank's destroying the evidence. They paid
Okay.
on my behalf in housing court $26,000, and when I had the cashier's check number, I went running down to my local branch, where everybody's trying to figure it out and also trying to keep
Yeah.
their jobs, and they could not tell me who issued the check and what the amount was or what it was for. But seemingly it must have been on my behalf because they discontinued the court case.
But if you go walk in with a money order from the post office,
You could trace it.
you could trace it. Not only that, you get a money order, you leave it set off to the side. You got a granddaughter coming up. You get a money order, $100 a piece. And when that daughter reaches 21 years old, she can take those money orders down and cash them in. because they're backed by gold and silver. They're legitimate. They're the only money orders that you can sit on for an eternity and still works.
Wow.
See, this is what we were not aware of. This is part of the education.
If you get a postal money order, can you go down and say, I want gold? I want silver?
Well, then I got to give it to you because
We don't have any. We're all broke.
you've got a case right now up here in New York. A gentleman named Shane Bochek. He had a Liberty silver dollar.
Right.
All right. He used it at one of the stadiums up here. He bought a drink with it. The guy
You mean
behind
like what my grandfather had in his little chest? It was a U.S. grandfather had in his little chest. It was a U.S.
Well, no. Don't get this confused with a Morgan.
Oh, okay.
This is a regular Liberty silver dollar that you used to get on TV. It was 0.999% pure silver.
Advertised them like,
They busted this place because they took the silver, because they put silver out on here and people were buying them. That ounce of silver had worth. All right, but the guy called the police and tried to get Shane Bochek busted for counterfeit money. It wasn't counterfeit. All the guy had to do was put a Federal Reserve note in, pocket the Liberty silver dollar, and he made $29 profit.
Right.
It had value. So it sits there and shows you can't use gold and silver in this economy of ours. You have to use Federal Reserve notes.
At the same time, I heard that we don't really want to go back to a gold standard either, because the gold is not in Fort Knox anymore. Did you say earlier it was shipped over to Germany during World War I to start World War I?
Well, this is all part of what got shipped out through the 1920s, 1930s. This is what the Federal Reserve took out of this country. But like I said, I got a buddy out here in Oregon. They're pulling out tons and tons and tons of gold on a regular basis. We're pumping oil. We got natural resources. The system, if we were to go back into natural resources for our economy, then what would happen here is that they would turn around and have to pay the American people back all of the money that they've embezzled off of us with these promissory notes that they've handed. Because that IRS setup, technically, if you really understand IRS, what that is a tabulation of how much was in your account. What if we got back into gold and silver, this is what they're going to have to actually pay us back. Because think about it, if I was to sit here and hand you, I owe 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 you.
I got a stack.
Okay. Now, when I finally got some real money, you're going to come back and say, okay, I want my money for all these IOUs. I gave you credit. I gave you food. I gave you housing.
So when you're paying taxes until the owner shows up who's not bankrupt?
You can't pay taxes because there's no money. See, that's what people don't understand.
So what are they busting their ass over?
What they're busting their ass is over fraud. Because they're allowing you to believe that Federal Reserve note had value. Federal Reserve note. See, I got a case right now in Washington, D.C.
But if everybody believes it has value, doesn't it have value?
It does, because you were from the
If they
time.
have courts that are honorable, not dragging us in for no reason, where they switch it around, they're the ones robbing and stealing.
They're the ones who are
and then
not.
They say you are. They say you're doing the felony, and
That's
yet
exactly right.
What they're doing is horrifying.
What they're doing is they're cashing in out of your account. They're supposed to be paying off the public debt. This is where the 14th Amendment, Section 4 bounty comes in. And it's part of what we're teaching people.
Oh, we're going to be bounty hunters?
Yes, that's exactly what I am. I hold a position as a bounty hunter. I hold a position as a private attorney general.
And that's what you learn as private attorney general?
Because
it's so exhausting running away from all of this police. You're going to say, now we can take a stand.
We now can take a stand.
And say no more.
But see, this is why when they passed this new law in December, and they went in and they clarified the jurisdiction and venue of the federal courts, they thought they was going to put the hooks to us. What they did, they put the hooks to themselves. Because when you get in and read this Public Law 12-63, it goes in and it sits here and clarifies and sits here and says that we are alien residents, which is what I've been teaching all along, alien residents. It sits there and says that these are now foreign states. That's what I've been teaching all along. They're foreign states. Everybody who's sitting in a federal penitentiary, This law is not a new law. It's a clarification of an old law. Now remember, clarification.
Right, and I asked you why clarify.
So it's been clarified because it was being misconstrued. So they clarified the old law. So everybody that's ever said in a federal penitentiary who was brought into the United States District Court has been brought in under a foreign state status as an alien enemy.
And they never went through the State Department.
They never went through the State Department and their lawyers knew it.
Is that where you unravel it?
Yes.
To spring them?
Yes, this is what we started unraveling this. In my one episode, I think it was episode 97 on TalkShoe.com, on AIB Radio. You get into TalkShoe.com. Actually, just punch my name in, and I'm all over the internet.
Yeah.
You get into AIB Radio, go back into session like 97. I get into the foreign sovereign immunity side. It's like a 2.5-hour breakdown. I was on there with experts, and I come up with information that...
Episode 97, Talk Show, Air America?
No, it's AIB Radio.
AIB Radio.
AIB Radio. I also run Radio Free America, but I've dropped it because I was running 3 shows a week and I was getting burned out on 3 shows, so I'm down to 2. But we get in, we explain what the foreign sovereign immunity side is. Every one of these courts that's running us into the United States District Court has brought us in as alien enemy residents. They brought us in as a foreign state. Your lawyers know this, but your lawyers can't bring it up. Your lawyers can't tell it. They get disbarred.
They get kicked out of their unit.
Can you go into court and say, I'm not an alien enemy?
But you
and
can go
then
back
you
in.
have to go through the State Department.
You can go back in and make this issue, but you walk in and you go back in and challenge the court on their jurisdiction. Because what they do here, and what's in this law, it says district court. District court, okay. We was always the assumption that this was the Article 3 court. But when we walk in there, it's the United States District Court.
Right.
So we've been lied to as American people. That's why we discovered the District Court of the United States. So what we do now, we walk in and says, okay, this is the District Court. Would you please tell me which one we're in? Are we in the United States District Court? Or are we in the District Court of the United States? We're the United States District Court. Then this court lacks subject matter jurisdiction pursuant to the 11th Amendment. You can't bring claims against me because I'm a foreign state. You can't commit prosecution against me. You did not run through the Department of State. You did not get my immunity waived off of me. And you didn't serve me properly. These are going to be the arguments we're walking in here with.
I've always looked at the top left-hand corner of a lot of court papers, and I've often puzzled over the name. Like I think they say the City of New York, and I can't remember landlord, tenant. So all these are like little de facto courts.
Yes, they are. See what they don't. What people don't are going to start understanding here is part of what we're teaching. Because
everything that the Constitution and common law does not want, right? People just setting up their own court.
Well, yeah, they don't want that. But see, again, what has happened here, because of the state of emergency side of this thing, they sit down and shut the Constitution down. We're under military law. But see, I would rather run under military law, because if we was going to run under it, technically, these courts got to come back in under Title 10, which is the Code of Military Justice, okay? Under Section 333, which means that if we're under military law, under that 333, the courts cannot interfere with federal and state statutes, which brings us right back in full circle. They cannot interfere with constitutional protected rights, so that means we're right back under their own rules, their own regulations. Now stop and think about what I'm going to sit here and tell you. Whenever we was over in Iraq, and we took out Saddam over there, we put military law on Iraq, right? Okay, now when we went in and put the military law, we did not bring in the United States laws into Iraq. They had to follow the laws of Iraq against the people, not the United States. Same thing here. We're being occupied. If we're going to be occupied, then they have to follow the laws of this country, the federal statutes, the state statutes, and the constitutional protected rights, and they're not doing it. They're setting up their own, however they want to go do it, throw everything out.
Would they do it back in Iraq? Would they do the common law of the people there?
They had to, whatever laws they ran over there.
So you're saying the military is actually running a better ship?
Yes, they are. If we was actually under military
Joe
law.
and I don't like the word military. Joe has all these medals from Vietnam, and he has mixed feelings about them.
Well, it isn't the military that screwed us. It's the politicians.
Right.
It's the politicians that sit down and put limits.
See, that's why I wanted to take a goodwill tour to Kashmir and Pakistan with Raja to try to work out what is the importance of a warrior caste to then protect the intellectuals so that the intellectuals can come up with correct models. There's so many good people in the world.
Well, there is.
You know, and they want to do the right thing.
Well, see,
and they think they're following the right rules. And when you come to this point, you know, Joe's been the greatest blessing in my life, to stand with him in front of a judge as all this was coming down, and to hear him argue and express and watch the light come on. I mean, the court clerk, she was just riveted to us. She'd never seen this kind of thing happen.
And I'm an amateur.
Yeah, about the securitization. She knows the QSIP number. She fills out the paperwork. She saw the cases. She saw these people doing harmless things, being thrown into jail to satisfy these amounts of money. And so many smart people are not seeing it.
Because we're not educated. We're kept out of it.
The clerk did. I mean, she knows that a face and a flesh and blood human being goes with this number.
Well, they're the ones who set it up. Because what we've discovered, the court administrator sets up the QSIP number for every single court case. Every ticket the cop writes, there's a QSIP number on it. Every court case has a QSIP number on it. All right, it goes into, let's sit here and say we found infidelity insurance out on the stock market. All right, they've already securitized on it. They have to find you guilty now because otherwise they've embezzled money out of the stock market for unreasonable profits. So they have to find you guilty to justify the money that they made off of you. All right, we got into what is known as the CRIS account. It stands for the Court Registry Investment System.
That's what we sent to Judge Lindy Baker.
Okay, this goes in. This is sitting on a stock market. Every one of these cases is sitting on a stock market for securitization. It's highly profitable. The judge has vested interest in this. This is part of their retirement program.
Yeah, I know.
But see, this turns around violates Title 28, 455. Does this judge have vested interest? Yes, he does. Does the court? Yes, they do. This is why the bars...
And a vested interest means they should recuse themselves because it won't be an impartial...
Well, the problem of it is, what judge you're going to put on the bench that it isn't going to sit down, even if he finds you guilty, he's kicking it over for his buddy. This is where the problem's coming in. This is why we, the American people, are going to have to get better educated and wake up to this. It's like I proved in a court case in Ohio. I came in as a private attorney general. All right.
Just recently?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, with Roger.
Up here in, was about 3 weeks ago. It was up in Ohio. We went in before a federal judge. I got up there. I laid out my credentials. I showed her they were stamped by the Judiciary Committee on the House and Senate side. I handed her the private attorney general laws from 1866 and 1979. The thing of it is, the private attorney general, all of us hold this position. Congress gave you and me and the people in the audience, we all hold position as private attorney general because it was given to us by Congress to go after the system, for us to bring charges, for us to come back in. This is supposed to have been our remedy for reprimanding.
Charges against the judges and the police officers and the sheriffs and everyone who was acting out of line.
Yes, and this is where the 14th Amendment, Section 4 bounty came in. Because the moment that judge acts outside of his judicial position, and every one of them do, because the moment they claim jurisdiction and they fail to tell you that they brought you in under the Trading with the Enemy Act, or they failed to brought you in under state of emergency, they step outside their jurisdiction. That 14th Amendment, Section 4 bounty now allows the private citizen to go bring charges against them, and under the Confiscation Act of 1861, which has never been repealed, allows us to go after their property, their bank accounts, their cruise liners, their airlines, their condos, have it all confiscated, just like a drug dealer. You get a drug dealer, what do they do with the drug dealer? All his money they confiscate. They confiscate all of his property. That is supposed to go in towards paying the public debt, but that isn't where it goes. It goes into the pocket of the politicians, it goes into the pocket of the judges, it goes into the pocket of the police officers.
I just realized they must securitize all of the subscribers to cable television.
They do.
Time Warner, it costs you $100 a month.
Yes.
So that means if they know $100 a month is coming in on a captive audience, it must be mind-boggling if you figure out the securitization.
Okay.
Say just here in Manhattan, if we're going out to 600,000 households.
Yeah.
That's 600,000 each month paying $100,000. So that
Your cell phone?
That's the least of it, right? That's
Your
the
electric?
least of it.
Yeah, cell phone, electric, everything that you sign a signature on. Everything you sign a signature on. Your credit card?
What is this thing that I thought was A for B, but it was A for V?
A for Z.
Accepted for value. You get that check or that.
A for Z.
Accepted for value. You get that check or that what you think is a bill in the mail.
It's a voucher.
It's a voucher and it's got those barcodes.
Yeah.
There's some way that people can turn it around and.
It's supposed
sign
to,
it?
all right, supposedly through UCC, what that is your dividend off the bankruptcy of what they owe you.
And yet you're paying $100 a month, say,
And
for
you're,
a cable
and you're
bill.
sending it back, and you're sending a check. And you're signing your check, so they're cashing this, and
Oh,
they're
we're just finished? Could you give me 2 minutes warning next time? When I'm up to
Okay,
15
are we gonna?
minutes?
Can we take a short break?
If it's super short, we don't.
2:05. We have 3:30, so you can just take a short break. I'll take.
Okay, and then let's
Okay,
pick up on this. Is that okay?
Yeah,
You want to keep going?
I don't care.
We should go on his presidency because we need this
Right.
man in the presidency.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I'm going to leave this right here.
Can I get a glass of water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? You're so nicely mic'd here, though. Yeah, I guess that's okay. You're not.
I'll get you water.
My goodness. Can you imagine? It just hit me. $100 a month.
Yes.
But that's the least of it.
Yes.
If that's being securitized, Raja, did you catch that last thing, Danny?
The what, Dolly?
If you're securitizing $100 a month coming in, every month they're securitizing it, it must be into mind-boggling billions.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just $100
That's
a
what,
month.
once the people start understanding this, then we're going to have a revolt in this country.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, of course.
I'm ready.
I wonder what the
Revolt.
thermometer says.
I gotta have a cigarette. I'll
This
be
is-
right back.
Condos, have it all confiscated, just like a drug dealer. You get a drug dealer, what do they do with the drug dealer? All his money they confiscate. They confiscate all of his property. That is supposed to go in towards paying the public debt, but that isn't where it goes. It goes into the pocket of the politicians, it goes into the pocket of the judges, it goes into the pocket of the police officers.
I just realized they must securitize all of the subscribers to cable television.
They do.
Time Warner, it costs you $100 a month.
Yes.
So that means if they know $100 a month is coming in on a captive audience, it must be mind-boggling if you figure out the securitization.
Okay.
Say just here in Manhattan, if we're going out to 600,000 households.
Yeah.
That's 600,000 each month paying $100,000. So that
Your cell phone?
That's the least of it, right? That's
Your
the
electric?
least of it.
Yeah, cell phone, electric, everything that you sign a signature on. Everything you sign a signature on. Your credit card?
What is this thing that I thought was A for B, but it was A for V?
A for Z.
Accepted for value. You get that check or that what you think is a bill in the mail.
It's a voucher.
It's a voucher and it's got those barcodes.
Yeah.
There's some way that people can turn it around and.
It's supposed
sign
to,
it?
all right, supposedly through UCC, what that is your dividend off the bankruptcy of what they owe you.
And yet you're paying $100 a month, say,
And
for
you're,
a cable
and you're
bill.
sending it back, and you're sending a check. And you're signing your check, so they're cashing this, and
Oh,
they're
we're just finished? Could you give me 2 minutes warning next time? When I'm up to
Okay,
15
are we gonna? Can we take a short break?
If it's super short, we don't.
2:05. We have 3:30, so you can just take a short break. I'll take.
Okay, and then let's
Okay,
pick up on this. Is that okay?
Yeah,
You want to keep going?
I don't care.
We should go on his presidency because we need this
Right.
man in the presidency.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I'm going to leave this right here.
Can I get a glass of water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? You're so nicely mic'd here, though. Yeah, I guess that's okay. You're not.
I'll get you water.
My goodness. My goodness. Can you imagine? It just hit me. $100 a month.
Yes.
But that's the least of it.
Yes.
If that's being securitized, Raja, did you catch that last thing, Danny?
The what, Dolly?
If you're securitizing $100 a month coming in, every month they're securitizing it, it must be into mind-boggling billions.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just $100
That's
a
what,
month.
once the people start understanding this, then we're going to have a revolt in this country.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
ready.
of course.
I'm ready.
I wonder what the
Revolt.
thermometer says.
I gotta have a cigarette.
This
I'll be
is-
right.
Based on the Bible, has understood. Okay.
Here we are on Farther Down the Rabbit Hole, and we're lucky to have with us Rod Class, and Rod's running for president, and I suggest all you people out there write in Rodney Dale Class for president. He's probably the only person who has the answers for the problems in our country. And I'd like to introduce Rodney Dale Class.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, I am running. I decided through what I teach, we know where the problem's at. We don't need a change in our country. We need the problem fixed.
Oh, excuse me. The CG says attorney. He's actually a private attorney
General.
general.
Yeah, PAG. Don't make me down as attorney.
No, that's okay. That's okay. People should know the difference between an attorney and a private attorney general. So
Oh,
while,
yeah.
while you're fixing that up, private attorney general, explain that difference.
Okay, a private attorney general is what we were sitting here talking. All of us have the ability to come in and sue the system. The Congress set this thing up for us. We actually have the ability to come in and correct. We're supposed to.
We're supposed to.
Supposed to. But because of the corruption of the court system, the courts don't want to recognize anybody outside of the bar association. If you're not a bar member, then they can't control you. This is what happened up here in Cincinnati, in Ohio. We had an attorney who was walking in on a bankruptcy. Now, stop and think here, and this is one of the reasons why I'm running for president as a write-in. When you're dealing with a bankruptcy court, what is a bankruptcy court? It deals with what? Bankruptcy. The American people aren't bankrupt. The system's bankrupt. The U.S. government is bankrupt, not the American people.
It can't pay its creditors.
That's
and
exactly
the
right.
creditors are the American people, but we're not going into court as creditors. Somehow they turn it around.
They switch
and we're
it
going
around.
in as the debtors.
Because they're sitting here saying that we came in and we went to the bank, we borrowed money. Did you borrow money? No. What we gave you was our signature. And this is what Raja has sit here and proved. This is what we're coming back in on. So we're addressing this. So the thing of it is, what the courts don't want us to do is we're walking in and exposing the bankruptcy of the banks. Because under Title 12, which is bank and banking regulations, get into Section 95, 95A, 95B. These are the regulations and duties of the banks. And what does it sit here and tell you? It deals with the state of emergency. It deals with the fact that there's no gold and no silver under foreign state setup. There's no money. 95B says
Foreign states.
setup. Yes, that's where all the gold and silver was turned over. We don't have any. The banks know this. 95B goes in with a proclamation.
Oh, excuse me. Turning over the gold is like when you go bankrupt, they take whatever you have left and you turn that over because you can't pay all your creditors?
Well, yes. This is what happened in 1933. See, the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, not a whole lot of people are aware of this. In 1933, the Comptroller of Currency appointed the FDIC as a receiver in a bankruptcy over 4,000 banks. Now, what is a receiver in a bankruptcy? A receiver is the one who has to pay the bills, has to pay the debt.
Out of whatever's left.
Yes, because the people put a deposit into the bank. At that time, people put gold into the bank. The government confiscated the gold. This goes back into what McFadden was sitting here saying in 1933.
Congressman McFadden.
Yeah, Congressman McFadden was saying in 1933. that the money is backed by the people of the nation. We back the currency. It will never diminish from 100%, but we've watched our currency go down to 17 cents, 7 cents. Inflation.
Because we're less valuable, our labor's less valuable?
Well, what they've done is they've cut out jobs. They cut out jobs, they cut out the economy of this country.
But when they back us, they back the currency.
The people back it.
We're collateral?
Let's get back on him for president.
Okay, but this all comes back in.
Which is why we started with Joe,
This is why I'm running for president, because we're explaining all this to the fraud, and this is something that the people need to understand. That's why I'm running for presidency. Because I can bring this out, I can show the American people, and I would show the American people, the fraud that's been perpetrated by the banks, by the lawyers, by the judges, by the banking system. Now, we're not talking the little tellers down the street. We're not talking about the little managers. We're talking high up here. Not the lower class people that you deal with on a daily. They don't know. But your upper management does know. They are part of this. And this is why this has to be corrected. This is why, with the background that I have, the knowledge that I have, and the fact that I can sit here and show you in congressional records, I can show you in their own laws, because if you get into Title 12, Section 411, 411 deals with the Federal Reserve Bank, deals with the Federal Reserve agents, deals with the national banks, that Federal Reserve note is internal currency. That $100 bill I showed you, I'm not allowed to have that under their own rules and regulations. That's internal currency.
Wow. Unless you want to be an employee of them?
Yes.
And you aren't.
I'm not. Neither are you.
So we shouldn't even be having these.
No, we're not. This is what...
I'm compliant.
Okay. This is what that 411 gets into. The United States is obligated. It's their debt. It's their problem. But see, this is where, if you get into Title 12, under Code of Federal Regulations, get into Chapter 9, under 9.1, 9.2, point you back to USC Code, under Title 12, 95A, 95B, it deals with the bankruptcy. There's no money. And this is what Congress has been hiding from the people. This is what the presidents has been hiding from the people. This is why the presidents have been able to pull a state of emergency. That's why the people are losing everything they have. This is why the president doesn't have to go to Congress and get a law passed. He does it through presidency, through the state of emergency.
So it's not the Patriot Act. It's always been like this?
It's always been like this.
And the Patriot Act was what? Just...
The Patriot Act was like in whenever Daddy Bush was in. He's the one who created this thing.
But I thought you said it was before military.
Well, it is, but the Patriot Act, when they created this thing, it was another means of stripping the people. But if you get in and read Rule Section 800, and you get this under Title 18, under Title 20, Section 2331, you go back and read this, and you really read it hard, it don't apply to you and I. It applies to public officials. Right. They're the ones who's creating the terrorist activities against American people. Because remember,
they certainly are.
We come under the Lieber Code. We are non-combatants. They are coming in and creating the people to have a attitude with the system. Whatever you got police officers out here, and I got a friend that sits here and shows that police officer has to have a mentality of less than 100 for a test. For your IQ level?
Really? I thought that was just a joke
on
the internet.
No, that's not a joke.
How sad.
They have an IQ of less than 100
so
because
that means police officers who are watching this are going to say I was selected because I had a low IQ?
Yes, because
they want someone who's going to follow the law, not understand it, follow the rules.
But we clearly have to educate them too and lift
Yes,
them
we do.
up.
This is part.
Because at a certain point, they're going to have to decide, who am I really wanting to do this activity for? For my oath, which I believe in? Wow.
This is why you're running into a problem. Why the cops out here, they don't have a problem bashing your head into the hood of their car. They don't have a problem beating you with a nightstick because they know the prosecutor is always going to cover it up.
Right.
And the judges are always going to cover it up. It goes right back to Nazi Germany. I'm only following orders.
You know, that is so true, because when Joe and I went in there, he thought that because he has been an offender for so many times that he would be getting all the heat. They were attacking me for obstructing an officer in his line of work, and yet I was the one that was dragged out of my car. How can you obstruct somebody when you're little and frail and they're big and they have all of the weapons? How could you possibly do that?
Well, see, this is part of their mentality. And this is why coming in, if I get in as president, I could come in and expose this. I can go back in and I can eliminate the state of emergency clause, and I would. I would come back in and open this thing up to the people.
With one stroke of the pen,
With
you
one
can
stroke of the
eliminate
pen.
the emergency clause?
We can go back in. One stroke of
If
the
he
pen.
was the president,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
what we want.
Right.
One
Which
stroke
is
of
why
the
your
pen.
wife is nervous, right?
One stroke of the pen creates a state of emergency. One stroke of the pen gets rid of the state of emergency.
And then we go back to what the
Okay,
Constitution, the Bill
but
of Rights.
before you do that, you have to fix the problem.
Right.
You have to address the corruption.
Okay.
You have to come back in and re-educate the police officers that, hey, you took an oath to the Constitution. These people aren't your enemies. The lawyers, the Bar Association has lied to you. The judges have lied to you. You're nothing more than an scapegoat. You are an expendable.
Right.
Because if you get shot down on the street, they'll just go find somebody else, replace you to go do your job. You're an expendable. The reason why, see, everybody thought that was a joke, but it's not. We've actually went back and got proof. The guy had an IQ of 110. He quit making to be a police officer. He had to have an IQ less than 100.
Really?
Yes.
So they cheat on the test
I didn't know.
to act
I didn't
stupid.
know that they had a. You
Yeah.
couldn't be higher than a certain level.
No.
Well, yeah, because you'd figure out the scam, because you're the ones that are having to do the evictions and see all this distasteful stuff. And remember that officer, the light bulb goes on. Joe said, you know that the enemies here are the bankers. You're not going to have a retirement. You think you're doing all this work because at the end of your career, you're going to have a retirement and you're going to be safe from doing the things that you're doing to other
Yes.
people. But with no retirement, you're going to be evicted. And the guy got it.
Well, see, this is it. Once they start understanding, that's why the state of emergency clause is so important for people to understand. This is why we pound on this on my show, on AIB Radio, on Talk Show.
AIB Radio Talk Show.
All right. That's why we get in, because we have to get the people to understand. I had federal marshals that listened to my show for over a year and a half, and now it's going on about almost 2.5 years. But they came up and they paid me a visit. And they sit down and says, Mr. Class, they introduced themselves, says, we're here to sit here and talk to you about what you're teaching. I says, okay, what's going on here? She says, we did the research of what you were sitting here saying, and we have been lied to by our government. The government has lied to us. Everything that you've ever brought up, all the laws that you brought up, all the congressional acts that you brought up, all the International Immunities Act that you brought up, it shows that we are foreigners. We are not American citizens. It showed that we gave up our citizenship. I said, yes, you did. Because, go back and think here, and we talked about this down at the motel. Prior to the Act of 1871, we had Washington and Georgetown. That was part of the United States. In 1871, a lot of people don't understand this, and we got a hold of some researchers got this to me, and we started reading it, we started tearing it apart. When they created the Act of 1871, that's where they created Washington, D.C. What is Washington, D.C.? It's a territory. It's not part of the United States. They moved it out of the United States and made it a territory. That's what this act gets into. So Washington, D.C. is separate from the rest of this country. So whenever they're bringing charges like IRS or the federal government...
Municipality, I mean, they're a municipality?
No. Well, they are, but they are a territory. Like Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Mariana Islands. These are territories. They're a subsidiary of the United States.
Possessions of the United
Yeah,
States.
they're not states.
So a possession of the United States is bringing a sovereign people into
Yes.
their courts without going through the State Department.
That's exactly
That's
right.
supposed to protect sovereign
Yes.
people.
That's
But
a-
they can't protect sovereign people unless sovereign, flesh and blood human beings stand up in court and claim this right.
That's exactly right. Until we start getting educated and we start addressing it. It's like IRS. In the name of the United States of America, we bring charges against John Doe Smith. Well, wait a minute. The United States of America doesn't exist. Because why? Because you dissolved it in 1871. It's now called the District of Columbia. You can't bring charges on the United States of America. There's no such thing as a United States Attorney's Office. Why? Because it comes out of a territory. It comes out of D.C. That's a territory. That isn't part of our country. See, this is what we're missing
And we're
out
so
on.
confused because they happen to put that territory right on top of what the Founding Fathers set aside
That's exactly
for
right.
federal land, to where all the states could come together and build their, court buildings and,
And this is why we have the separation between the federal and the state side of this thing. That's how they did it.
Wow.
One of the things that I would do as president, I would come in and dissolve that corporation. I would dissolve that territory.
Well, it's illegal, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It didn't register in all the 50 states where they take you to court.
That's exactly right.
So
That's
it's
why
not
they
even
got.
a real corporation.
That's why they, in 1930, 38, 39, they went to the United States District Court, which was a territorial court.
Right.
This was the fraud that was put on American people. That's why they brought us in under foreign sovereign immunity. It's a territory. It's a foreign state. See, what a lot of people don't
Feels
understand.
pretty foreign.
Yeah, we are. But see, the thing of it is, sitting here talking it, this is why I quote the statutes. Because if you get into Title 22 CFR, and into 92.12 to 92.30, Title 22 CFR is foreign relations. Wait a minute, foreign relations. 92.12, 92.30 deals with oaths of office. Why is there oath of office under foreign relation? All right, Title 8, alien residence. Title 8, 1481. The moment these people take an oath to the Constitution of the United States and take an oath to the Constitution to the state, they relinquish their national citizenship. All right, ask anybody in the military. Joe, you was in the military. You
Yeah.
remember taking your oath?
Yeah.
You remember taking that one step forward?
Yep.
That one step forward walked you out of your citizenship.
Did
You
you
didn't know it.
Yeah.
You
Walked
didn't know
us-
it.
No, we didn't
No.
know it at the time.
No, they don't tell you.
But if you don't take that step forward, you can't be in the military.
But isn't that fraud if they don't inform you?
Well,
You're
this
just
is-
Well, no, when
conscripted.
I was in, they said, as long as you're in the room, even if you don't take a step forward, if you're in the room, that's what they told us.
Yeah.
If you're in the room when the oath is read, you're in.
Okay, well, we was told if you don't take
You're
that
already looking for a way out.
step, we was told if you didn't take that step forward, they can't accept you. And some guys didn't; they didn't get accepted. But see, the point being of it is,
Because they keep changing the rules. That's what.
yeah. But the thing of it is, when they did this, that now makes every one of these police officers, the garbage man that works for the city who has to have an oath, he's no longer an American national. He's now a foreign national. So when we are being dragged into the courts by the state of, it is a foreign entity that's dragging us in. That's why they're dragging us into a foreign state court. And we was not aware of this. Well, in the last couple of years, we've been pushing this on our show. We've been explaining this to the people, and we're starting to come back and combat the courts on this issue. This is why, coming in as president, Ron Paul, as good as he is, Ron Paul has told a lot of truth in this thing, whether people want to believe him or not. He actually told a lot of truth in this thing. But Ron Paul has a major problem. He's part of the system.
We found that out about pot.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
He's part of the system. And for him to come back and do would be jeopardy on him. He would have to actually clean house.
So in other words, he's running for president on a get rid of the Federal Reserve ticket. Does he have a plan for it?
From what I understand, he does. I'd like to be able to meet him and sit down and talk to him on what we're talking about, because him and I are a lot of the same track. See, the difference is between him and I, he's got years and years of politicians behind him as congressman. He has faulty suckers. Me, I haven't been. I've been on internet radio. I'm a private individual.
Yeah, you came up from the people.
I
like
came
me
up from
and
the
Joe.
people. Yeah, I came up from the people's level. Everything that I sit down and talk, and there's one thing that I've learned with some of the meetings that we've had with some of the people. When I had a PowerPoint projector and I could show the congressional laws up on the wall, okay, this is not me saying it. Here's what the law says. This is what Congress says. This is what the law sits here, actually sits here and says. Okay, it's like
got those 22 gigabytes of all that data.
It's like dealing with the pot deal. Okay. The courts will never sit down and tell you that in 1996 that Title 21, Section 841, possession was repealed by Congress. Possession of drugs was repealed. But they're not going to tell you this because it's highly profitable to sit down and bust you.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay. Now, this isn't me saying it. You guys now have the congressional records that goes back and shows.
We have your templates and stuff.
That goes back and shows that possession is repealed. And if you get into the United States United States Code under the annotated section, get into Title 21, read down Section 841, down to the bottom, it has a couple little words. It says repealed. Wait a minute, repealed. What's this mean, repealed? It means it got taken off the books. They never reinstated it. So what they're doing, now remember, there's a difference between possession and selling. Difference between possession and selling.
There's stiffer penalties for selling than possession.
That's exactly right. So you can possess as long as you are not selling it. And what they're busting you for is intent to sell. Well, how do you know intent to sell? They can't read your mind.
But what's the matter with selling?
Well, again, I don't want to get into that aspect of it because I have
selling anything. Well, I mean, who should tell you what you can sell? Constitution man said when you go in there and they say you're not a lawyer, you can say I can, barter my time and my energy any way I see fit, and ask for whatever I want for my time and energy. So why not for some product?
Okay, that's different. But what you're looking at here is...
I know it's an emotional issue. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what drugs are versus pharmaceuticals if you look at side effects and so on. But still, you're talking about possession or selling, and you're saying that something that everybody believes exists, which is a draconian law that's just terrorizing people. You've got 500,000 people in prison for no crime. They've harmed no one. But how many more closet people, smokers, do you have that this only reinforces their terror and timidity to stand forward? How do you do that? Because it was repealed with the paperwork we saw. We kind of didn't understand it. Remember those 4 pages?
Okay, let's get back on topic. Okay. I want him to get elected.
But see, back.
So without the state of emergency, Rod's elected. He signs away the state of emergency. What's this going to do to all these problems?
What's it going to do is come back in and it's going to
government off the back of the people.
Yeah, it's going to.
That's what he's trying to do.
It's simple. It's going to force the court system to come back in compliance with its own rules and regulations. It's like coming back in with a grand jury. Okay, once you get rid of the state of emergency, where you sit here and eliminate, because right now, as long as they can securitize off your signature, you're worth billions to them. When you take that means of securitizing off your name and put them under a gold standard, oil standard, lumber, salt,
pot, could be anything.
Whatever, for commodity.
It has been pot in the past, I'm sure. Hashish, it would be,
During revolutionary times, you could pay taxes in hemp.
Yeah.
In hemp, yeah.
But see, this would have a market value no longer for people. Because as long as you're dealing with people, now stop and think what Obama said here and said when he first got elected, when he did the bailout on the banks. We are going to borrow off of future generations' income. Future generations.
Not labor?
No.
Income.
Well, that would be labor.
Yeah.
That would be labor.
No, unless you had capital ownership.
Well, no, you don't. The future, we're going to borrow off your great-great-grandchildren. That means when they come up, they're going to have to work to pay the debt off, because they're going to have to be able to work to cover the debt.
So that's why each generation is more and more enslaved?
Yes.
So
But if they actually went back...
as a youth than youths do today?
But if they actually went back in and they dealt with gold, silver, oil, pot, whatever, if this was the commodity, now however much you had of this is how much the debt could only be limited to. Now, stop and think here. When they are borrowing off future generations, they have an unlimited amount of borrowing power as long as you're producing kids.
Wow.
You have it unlimited. That's why they're bringing the foreigners in. That's why they're allowing them, because we're running out of American people. We've got so far in, we need to bring new people in, allow them to come in so we can securitize off their labor. Yeah. The problem of it is they're getting rid of all the jobs out of this country. And that's one of the things that would have to be changed if I got in. We'd have to bring the steel mills back in. We'd have to bring in the coal industry back in for what they're doing.
The auto industry.
The oil industry. We would have to set up our own oil refineries in this country. Because what we have done, people were sitting here and told if we do the Alaskan pipeline, our gas prices would come down. Our gas prices hasn't come down, they've went up.
Right.
Our oil out of Alaska is being shipped overseas. All of our resources are being shipped overseas. It's not being used to pay off this country's debt. That's one of the things, if I got in, it would pay off this country's debt. We would bring this thing back into a budget setup, and it would only take less than a stroke of a pen to come back in and to fix the problem. Because once you expose the bankruptcy fraud of this country that has been perpetrated, and you go back and expose where they have securitized off your name, like I said, that's where Roger comes in with what he has proven in the congressional records that we're sitting on. Once American people start understanding this, of how we're being ripped off and how we're being railroaded, why would we want to put, as good as Ron Paul has put him back in, to which he may end up getting railroaded, why would we want to put Obama back in? Why would we want to put Mitt Romney or Newt Gingrich back in?
Forget them.
Yeah.
Once we know the scam.
Once we know the scam. And see, these guys aren't willing to talk about this. Ron Paul hits the topic of it, but the news media has covered him and cut him off on a lot of this.
And yet you're racing around the internet, so the word's getting out.
Yes, we are.
And people are exercising these ideas in court.
And we are getting this. Yes.
Now, what you were just saying about people being in federal prison and they were in the wrong courts?
Yes.
Have you done any paperwork that's released some of these innocent people?
Well, right now we're working on it. Where this information has just come up. With this law just got passed here within the last several weeks. Okay. This Public Law 112-63, HR 394. It just got passed. We just got our hands. We're just now trying to go through and decipher it.
What is this law?
This is where it goes in and it shows where the jurisdiction and venue is being clarified of what these federal courts are supposed to be running under. It shows what their actual jurisdiction is. We knew what it was, but we could never prove it. Now we got the law that goes actually proves what we've been sitting here saying is right. They are operating as, dragging us in as alien enemies. They are dragging us in under foreign state into these courts. We now can prove it because now we got the law handed to us. Says, yes, that's what we're doing to you people. This is how we're railroading you.
So, Rod, every time they clarify to kind of make it more draconian, or they're actually revealing more to sharp people like you their maneuvers.
Yes.
So that it can be unraveled. They take a certain risk. Like, Joe, you were talking about tyrants. Do you want to say that, to step over the line?
No, I prefer to let him talk. I want to get him elected.
Stay on military,
because
though.
I see him as the only answer to fixing the problem here in America.
And yet he's
I'm on television a lot. I can do my rap anytime. I would prefer to sit here and be quiet and let this man tell the American people, because only if the American people wake up and demand change and elect someone like him who's not a politician
And
are
yet-
we going to get the country
and
back
yet-
on the track where the American
And
people
yet he's
are free?
But yet he's talking about bringing in the military, and we have maybe a psychological issue about that.
We do,
But part
because-
of it I like it because I taught transcendental meditation at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Okay, the
so,
thing-
you know, I like military efficiency.
The thing of it is the military has caught a lot of bad rap, but it goes back to the politicians. It goes right back to the Bar Association. These are the people that's dictating so much to the military. Because if they do something wrong, who's going to prosecute them? Some think. If the military does
Nobody.
something wrong, who's going to prosecute them?
Nobody.
Yes.
Unless the military does.
If the military does something wrong, you're going to have
But
them...
the military needs orders from we the people? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
That's why they haven't made any moves?
That's exactly right. The thing of it is there's not enough American people that is woke up to sit here and say, we want you to fix the problem. Okay? There's not enough of us. They are afraid. Let's go back into 1996 when we was dealing with the freedmen out there in Montana. There was over 900,000 militia people out there. Okay? Don Voss was part of it. There were several other people that I've talked to as part of this. They went head-to-head with the military. The military and these people were supposed to have been working together as a unit. Place and they were here.
Yeah, that's for sure, the way
Okay.
it's going.
See, this is one advantage that I have because, see, we've dealt with congressmen in Washington, D.C. here since 2006. All right, we have talked to several different congressmen. I'm not going to use their names. For the simple reason, when we confronted them, they told us we cannot help you because they threaten to kill our families if we do. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a minute. You're congressman. They threaten to kill your family? Where's Homeland Security? Why don't you send Homeland Security out to these people who threaten to kill your family?
Right.
Well, we can't do that because it's part of the system. Well, excuse me. It's part of the system? Then we need to correct the system.
Yeah.
Anytime the system can come in and threaten those who hold public office that you better do what we're told or we're going to kill your family. This is why I want to run for president, because the bottom line is you can't blackmail me, you can't threaten me, and if I got in, I would get rid of the corruption out of this system. Now, I would probably be in hiding for about a year and a half until we get rid of the corruption in order to be from it. Because John Kennedy, as good as he was, he went after the corruption, but he made one mistake. He went out in a convertible out here in Texas. He didn't have a bulletproof glass around him. But also, from what it showed in some of the videos, if it's true or not, his own serviceman shot him.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, the thing of it is this.
Same
You want
thing
the
with
problem
Mahatma
fixed,
Gandhi.
people, you're going to have to address the problem. In order to address the problem, you have to know where it's broken. And this is part of what I've been teaching over the last several years, trying to get people to understand. It's going to take the American people to fix this problem. The American people are going to have to stand up. The military will not step in as long as the American people are in fear, like out here with dealing with Montana Freeman. As long as there's going to be a conflict here, we have to work with the military on this. The military technically here, if you go back under their rules and regulations, I just didn't work under their rules and regulations. Because their rules and regulations of engagement with the civilian population is a lot better than we have right now with the court system and police officers.
Nothing.
Yes.
It's lawless practically.
Yes. And if the courts, the judges, because technically being under military law, the judges and the police officers actually come under military jurisdiction. They actually come under the Lieber Code. As President of the United States, I would enforce that Lieber Code.
For this third show, say again what the Lieber Code is.
That Lieber Code is rules of engagement for military personnel dealing with civilian population here in the United States.
Give us some examples.
Okay, your police officers, they're paramilitary. Okay,
And
when
they
they come out and they pull you over, they have to use protocol. You are non-combatant. They are not here to intimidate you. They're not here to provoke you in what they're doing. Same thing with the court system. When that judge sits up there on that bench, he comes under the military code of justice. If he is up there for personal gain, Now, this isn't
Which
me
you can
saying.
clearly show with the Chris system.
Exactly right. The Lieber Code clearly goes in and shows that if they are caught in personal gain, sitting on a bench, personal gain out here in the street, the military is supposed to come up and cap them in the head, shoot them. That's their justice. That's their court. That's not me saying read the Lieber Code.
Right.
This Lieber Code is very strict on their side.
But as you're saying this, I'm thinking about my own encounter with the police officer who dragged me out of the car. I kept saying, I'm afraid, I don't know who you are, which made him go berserk. So you're saying that according to the Lieber Code, you shouldn't have people with bayonets and, with all their gear, scary gear, coming up and intimidating you, making you afraid, and then really not identifying who they are.
Okay, stop right there. Let's go back to the beginning. What was the purpose for pulling you over to start with?
And now taillight.
Whoa, wait a minute. Where is the crime and the taillight being out?
I know.
Where's the injury? Where's the harm?
And it took
that
a long...
does not justify.
But then he said he smelt marijuana in my car.
The word smelt...
But he didn't even come up to us for a long time. It was a good 5 minutes. And Joe said he was probably running the plates and seeing the record, and he goes,
okay,
I
but
got
see,
a pot
that right there,
activist here.
that violated the Lieber Code.
Uh-huh.
That violated the Lieber Code. The fact that she had his taillight out, there was no harm, no injury, no foul.
Right.
Okay? The fact that he ran your plate and sit here and say, oh, well, we got a previous connection here. Now I'm going to make up a story. That comes in to where they have deliberately come in and aggravated and crossed the line. That violates the Lieber Code on their side fence.
They've done that to me 3 times. Twice they came in my house saying they smelt marijuana at my door.
Yeah.
The first time they got a warrant on...
After the fact warrant. The first time they came... But it was a knock warrant, and yet you woke up with...
No, let me...
Okay.
The first time, an supposed anonymous tip told them that I was growing marijuana. Then they sent a cop to my door up a half-mile driveway with no trespassing signs all the way up the driveway. He knocks on my door and says he's looking for a lost dog.
Nope, that violates the Lieber Code.
Now I said to him, I don't know where the lost dog is, and he goes away. Now when he went away, he went back to the court and said he smelt marijuana. They got a warrant. Now they come back with a warrant. They actually didn't even have the warrant. They gave me the warrant at the police station after the fact. But they come in with guns, woke me up with a shotgun in my face from dead sleep. And the guy with the shotgun shaking, right? Then they arrest me and my son. We go through court. Eventually, it goes down to if you plead guilty, we'll do nothing to you because I kept it for 3 years in paperwork, and they just wanted to get rid of me.